Hi, I'm Dan from idrinkyourwine.com. We're here today with Charlie Hoppes from Fidelitas. I have an interesting conversation lined up about what Fidelitas is all about and where Charlie came from and where they're going.
So it's good to be here with you today.
Great, thanks a lot, Charlie. Well, I'm looking forward to this. Got a number of questions here we want to do. The first one would be, I was wondering if you're from around here.
Yeah, actually, well, I wasn't born in Washington, but born in Montana, and then we migrated to the Yakima Valley in 1973.
Okay.
My dad was the superintendent of schools in Wapato.
Oh.
From about 73 to 82.
Okay. Okay.
So grew up in Wapato and agriculture and worked in the fields and vineyards and orchards growing up.
Yeah, okay. So you kind of have like a farming background then.
A little bit. My dad wasn't a farmer, it's just natural, and growing up in an area like that you're going to work in agriculture.
Sure, yeah. Was it in high school when you came here? Or
I was going to be a sophomore, yeah. Okay. So I started right off, well, high school then was sophomore through senior. So right. Yeah, I went to Wapato High School, graduated in 76.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you have the agricultural background, what piqued your interest in winemaking specifically?
Well, growing up, not even in Yakima Valley, but my parents drank wine. Not always great wine when I was growing up, but they drank what was available, and I'd try it once in a while with them, and so I had a little bit of an interest. And then growing up in an agricultural area. And then when I got into college, I became more interested. In those, at that time, it was mostly, white wines, sweet white wines, because that's really all we grew in Washington. And so also my wife's from the Tri-Cities. I used to come home with her when I was still an undergrad up at Eastern Washington University, and we'd visit wineries.
Okay.
With her parents, and that really got me kind of interested in the industry. And then I actually moved to Seattle and worked for a while for Boeing, but knew that wasn't a long-term deal for me. So I got some encouragement from people that were in the industry to pursue it if you're interested. So I did. I applied to go to school at UC Davis and got accepted in 1985 and quit my job despite all my friends and relatives and parents saying, "Are you really crazy?" And I
back then, yeah,
it was because that was 25 years plus ago, but I've never regretted it. It's been a good move, and I've always been happy I did it all that long ago.
Good for you. So once you went to school there at Davis, which I know has a great winemaking program there, enology program. You came back here and got hired at a winery here, or did you have a mentor or someone that really sort of inspired you to?
Well, I graduated from Davis in '88 and had opportunities to stay in California, but came up here in search of work and ran into a guy at the time that was running Snoqualmie, Languth, Saddle Mountain wineries, Mike Janik.
Okay.
And Mike Janik hired me right out of Davis, and I moved back and started working for him. So in '88 was my first vintage, working under Mike Janik. And Mike is definitely my mentor, winemaking mentor. We worked together at Saddle Mountain Languth, '88 through '90. Things kind of fell apart there financially. He went to work at Chateau Saint Michel as the head winemaker. I did the 1990 vintage at Waterbrook in Walla Walla.
Okay.
But in October, he hired me at Saint Michel, and I joined him there.
Okay.
And we were the winemakers there. Always working for Mike. He was the head winemaker. But I became his assistant in Woodinville from 90 to 92. And then when we built Canoe Ridge Estate Winery in 93, I became the head red winemaker and moved back over to Eastern Washington.
Okay.
So worked from 93 through the 98 vintage for Chateau Saint Michel, and sort of they moved into I'd say a different era of winemaking, where they really, reds really started to take off, and things changed for sure in the 90s. And then I decided I wanted to look at starting my own label. St. Michel at the time wouldn't let us do that and be their winemakers as well. So I left and went to work down in Walla Walla for Three Rivers Winery. And Mike Janik quit at the same time. And strangely enough, we made our 99 vintage. He made his first vintage, 99, at Waterbrook Winery in Walla Walla, and I made Three Rivers Winery at the same facility.
Wow.
And then when I moved to Three Rivers' new facility, Mike made his first 2 vintages with me at Three Rivers. So we had a run from about 88 all the way through right around 2001, where we made wine together every vintage.
Wow.
And he's a great person, a great winemaker. If you want to talk about the history of winemaking in Washington, he goes back to 84. So for me to learn from him has been great. I don't talk to him as frequently as I used to, but I talked to him this morning.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of the same winemaking philosophies.
I may have to put him on my list of winemakers.
You definitely need to.
So after your run there in Walla Walla at Three Rivers, you decided to do a little consulting, and at that point you decided you wanted to start Fidelitas?
Yeah, it kind of started even in 99, where there was a real void, where there really wasn't people out there helping people make wine. There was sort of a shortage of winemakers and people that knew how to make wine. So actually, when I was at Three Rivers, I started to do a little bit of consulting. And then I always had the desire to create my own label. So just sort of on a whim in 2000, I was able to get a little bit of fruit and get things started then. And consulted at that time for Ryan Patrick, and then started making a little bit of wine for Goose Ridge.
Right.
And then in 2002, saw the opportunity not only with Ryan Patrick, with Goose Ridge, and helping my friend Victor Cruz at Canyon de Sol. I decided to make the break from Three Rivers. My family and I continued to live in the Tri-Cities, and it just seemed like the right time. So went ahead and did that, and decided to do consulting full time, and then kind of ramp Fidelitas up a little bit.
Right.
So
well, continuing on that vein, I remember when the sign went up out there on Sunset Road in Benton City, in Red Mountain, future home of Fidelitas. That was really cool for me. I saw that and went, oh yeah.
Well, I've always loved Red Mountain. I can remember driving up and down Sunset Road when it was a gravel road, thinking, someday I really want to be here, and knew that land was there and that you could buy less than 20 acres, and knew that Stan Clark owned it, and never was for sale. I just went to Stan and made him an offer, and we did the deal, and it's worked out great.
Yeah, that's a nice little room out there. I really like that whole industrial chic kind of look.
Yeah, it's real contemporary, cool. Just like our label, and it's worked well. We'll have grapes coming in this year. Finally, some Cabernet off of that vineyard, and soon to have another 10 acres right there. We just purchased.
Oh, good for you. That's got a great view off the deck there too.
It's a nice view. Yeah. It's agricultural, which I like, and it's good to get people, especially from the west side, that this is where we actually grow things and make wine from a great appellation, Red Mountain.
Yeah. So I've always been curious, Charlie, about how you arrived at the name Fidelitas for the label. Well,
it would have been natural to probably use my name, but I have this Hoppes last name. It's more of a beer name than a wine name.
Yeah.
So we thought about geographically prominent names. Nothing seemed to fit well. So on my wife's side of the family, her father is second or third generation. Their name is Daniel Fidelis O'Neill.
Oh.
And so we wanted something that maybe had a family tie. So we thought, well, let's look into Fidelis. And so we did, and couldn't use the word Fidelis because Safeway had a trademark on it. They have a brand called Fidelis, and they wouldn't let us use it, but they gave the approval to use Fidelitas, so the same name. So it has a family tie, but the meaning.
It's a Latin word, right?
It's a Latin word for fidelity.
Ah.
So, just like the Marine Corps Semper Fidelis.
Sure.
Then we just moved it into Fidelitas. So we use faithful, loyal, true as our sort of 3 words that we kind of live by with the brand. And then we came up with a symbol of the ring of fidelity is kind of become synonymous with Fidelitas. And so we use it everywhere. It's on the tops of our bottles. It's on the corks.
The cork, yeah.
It's on my coat.
Yep.
So that's how we kind of came up with it. I do have some great partners that have worked with me the entire time, and they're my younger brother's works for Nike now, but he's been great in helping us brand Fidelitas, and we've really used this the symbol to really make our mark in the industry.
Sure, I think it's worked well. Everybody knows, the O and Fidelitas. Yeah.
Yeah, and it does take time. I mean, branding is. I always tell people, wine is a decades business, so don't expect to get in and make a lot of money, or even make money for maybe the first 10 years.
Right. Yeah, I've talked to winemakers, some very good winemakers, and you talk about them starting up a winery, and they say, yeah, it's kind of like buying a lifestyle for a while,
Yeah.
But yeah. So to continue in the marketing vein, I think it's probably a marketing. Maybe it's just kind of an inside joke or something. But you've come to be known as the wine boss. I think that's kind of cool. But how did that all come about?
Well, we needed something to sort of, for no better word, brand the consulting side of the business.
Oh, okay.
And I have an LLC name. It's called Venacious.
Sure.
I kind of came up with the name. Not a great marketable name. So again,
I like the ring of it, though.
It sounds good, but it doesn't really work that well. So, my brother, encouraged me to, you gotta find something of a better handle than that to use. So, I started working with a designer in Seattle, and just out of the clear blue sky, she came up with it. Sort of, if you're familiar with Cake Boss on the Food Network,
yeah.
It's kind of a takeoff on that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you're not the cake boss, you're the wine boss, and it's in fun. It's not a serious thing. I don't sit around and I don't call people and say, hey, this is the wine boss. It's all in fun. But it works as well. So there's some marketability to it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've seen some pictures of you kind of.
Yeah, I try to play
kind of ham it up a little bit.
Yeah, we have some fun with it. It's our business cards, our titles are fun things that aren't normal.
Sure.
So we're having some fun with it.
Good.
It's sometimes people take wine too seriously, and we try to lighten it up a little bit by coming up with the whole wine boss thing, and we're working on it. We'll see how it evolves.
Sure. Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, it is.
And I know you're a pretty easygoing guy there, so I can't imagine you're like putting the hammer down all the time, Charlie.
No, maybe too nice sometimes, but no, it's working, and we'll see where it goes in the future.
Okay, cool. Obviously, you've thought quite a bit about the branding aspect of this, which is important these days. Maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about the help you got along the way with that? Or?
Yeah, we with Fidelitas, we've been from the inception working with a guy named Joe Farmer, and he has a company called Whiz Bang Studio, and a great designer. So from our inception clear to what we do currently, we've worked with him, and so he's been great all along the way. Even our shelf talkers, our website, everything. So Joe's been great on the Fidelitas side of things. The whole origination of Wine Boss was really kind of the idea of a lady named Michelle Poole, and she's a graphic designer. Kind kind of a marketer, I would say. And she has a company in Seattle called the Design Pool. And she was the one that came up with the whole Charlie Hoppes wine boss thing, and sort of ties Fidelitas back into it with how she designed the logo, and she's been great as well.
Okay.
So those two people have been instrumental.
Okay, great. I've always been interested in what's the driving force behind a winemaker and the wines they make. Do you have any insight into that?
Well, I think, I'm coming up on my 25th vintage. So I've seen the industry when I started in '88, when it was, 90% white wine. And then, so the industry's evolved and changed over time. And the thing that really got me going in the 90s was making red wines, particularly Merlot, and what we could do with it on the world scene.
Okay.
In '95, I had the good opportunity to travel to France and spend some time there with other winemakers from other parts of the world on a tour through mainly Bordeaux, and tasting Bordeaux wines. I had, of course, tasted wines from other parts of the world, California mainly, but then to taste especially Merlot from the Bordeaux region, and then know what I know about what Washington wines taste like. I realized at the time that we had a huge future, and the quality that we can make and the things that we can do here, we were just scratching the surface, and we've seen that kind of evolve since then too.
Oh yeah.
In the last 15 years, things have really moved on, especially on the red side of things. And if you look at where Merlot falls, it's gone through some rough times, but it's never left Washington. We've always made great Merlot. I really, if there's one variety I could work with, it's got to be Merlot. I mean, I do make a lot of Cabernet as well, because you can't turn your back on what the public wants. Right. But we make great Merlot at Fidelitas. Washington makes great Merlot. Try a $10 Washington Merlot. Try a $100 Washington Merlot. They're great wines, top to bottom. And for me, that's been a huge driving force. And creating something that reflects what I like and the style I prefer. That's the beauty of a brand like Fidelitas. I always tell people, they say, well, how do you decide, what the wines are going to taste like? And I don't really look at, I'm trying to create these wines for the Seattle wine consumer. I create them because I like them, and if people generally will like them, then if you like them. Now, if I had a real strange palate and I was creating wines that nobody liked, then obviously I wouldn't be able to sell them, and it wouldn't work that way. But that's kind of my philosophy. Is there's a little bit of artistry in winemaking, not as much as some people want to make it out to be. A lot of it's just inherent in the great fruit that you get, and then you tweak it a little bit as a winemaker to create what you want. But I have the good fortune to work with a lot of great growers, and being able to turn that into great wine, and reflect upon how great a job they're doing in the vineyard, that gives me a lot of satisfaction. And then the fact that people enjoy it, that adds to it a little bit.
Okay, great. So we're talking about the fruit and how important that is to good winemaking. I know you have a few favorite vineyards around here that you like to use. You want to talk a little bit about those for me? Sure.
Well, I mean, obviously that's kind of reflected in the wines that we're making. We make 3 vineyard designated wines from particular growers. Have the good fortune to get fruit from Dick Boucher. That started in 2005 after he'd been in the industry. 2005 was his 25th vintage. So working with him and making a blend from his vineyard's been great. Really, really great fruit, great person to work with. And he also manages our vineyard on Red Mountain as well. And the other one on Red Mountain, Ciel de Cheval, Jim Holmes' vineyard, and working with Ryan as well there. he's been one of the pioneers of Washington viticulture, especially on Red Mountain. So the opportunity to make wines from his vineyard has been great. It's easy when you work with great growers. The fruits, you just, as a winemaker, you try not to make mistakes and just try to do the best by the fruit. And then of course, I've had a long working relationship with Paul Shampoo. Paul's from the Yakima Valley. We didn't know each other until I got into the wine industry, but when we look back, we have a lot of friends, and his relatives were acquaintances of my family in the Yakima Valley, Wapato, Toppenish area, and it's been wonderful working with him. Actually started doing analysis on fruit of his back in the 90s when I was at San Michel. He didn't have a lab, and he'd bring samples over to us, so that's when it started. When I decided to leave San Michel, he was one of the first people I called and said, would there be any chance I could get some fruit from you, because it would mean a lot to me and where I went in the future. And we came to that agreement. It's been a wonderful relationship working with him, with all the varieties that we get from him. So those are for me are the big three. Those are three icons viticulturally in Washington. I mean, there's other great growers. I have a long working relationship with a guy named Miguel Rodriguez at Weinbau Vineyard up on the Wild Oak Slope. He's been up there since I started in '88, and he works for Weinbau's part of Sagemore Farms. Okay. He's a really wine grape grower of the year 1 year, and he does an incredible job. I love working with him. He's one of those guys I can just sort of leave things up to. He'll call me and, it's time to pick the fruit. And,
nice. Yeah.
And it works out really well. It's been a pleasure to work with him.
Good. Well, Charlie, a number of wineries, they have reps that travel around to different wineries and different venues where they want to place their wine. But I know you like to do a lot of that personally, especially at the nicer restaurants.
Of course. That goes back to a little bit to the days of working in Woodinville at San Michel and having access to their great culinary department there, and that really was intriguing and showed me how much food and wine go together. So that was a real benefit for working there in the early '90s. But no, I think it's important for the size that we are that I get out and spend as much time as I can. There's other people that represent us at times. I just, with a family and everything, I just can't try to be everywhere. But I do like to get out there and be involved and be part of it. It makes a huge difference. People remember it. There's a lot of brands out there. There's a lot of good wine being made out there. So you have to sort of differentiate yourself somehow. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy talking and working with people and working with chefs and people that are out there on the street every day selling your wine. It's important that they know what the product's about. And right. So I try to do it as much as I can, but it's always a balancing act.
Sure.
How much time do you spend out there? How much time do you spend at home? But
right.
But I sort of enjoy it. I know winemakers that don't enjoy it, but I kind of like it.
Well, I'm a little bit jealous when I see your travels on Facebook and stuff. It's like, boy, I'd like to be there at dinner with Charlie tonight.
Yeah, I always tell people, I go, I know there's worse jobs because I'll be having just a great meal with a bunch of people that have paid to be there, and it's a pleasurable experience. And here I am working, so I know there's worse jobs.
Yeah, there are. Okay, cut. Perfect. There we go. All right. So, now if you don't have a favorite, we can skip this one. Is your favorite wine and food pairing? I mean, it's up to you. I mean, it's hard to choose like that kind of stuff sometimes.
Well, I'm a cheese freak.
Oh yeah.
I love cheese.
Okay. Well, that's good.
We can talk about that.
Okay, sure. Well, while we're on I better do this right. 3. Okay, well, while we're on the subject of food, everybody, the big deal these days is food and wine, wine pairings. Do you have a favorite pairing or a category that you like?
Well, I have to be honest. I mean, I love cheese. It's there's a lot of great other pairings, you know, red wine and different meats, but you know the range that cheese can be in, and how you can have cheese that goes great with Cabernet and cheese that goes great with Semillon. I think for me, all the different cheeses that pair with wine are something that I really enjoy. And you know, we just had a tasting this week, and we had cheese trays, and that was a great way to sort of, you know, kind of showcase the wines along with what they might go with, you know. And when I've traveled, and we've traveled to France, you know, I always enjoyed the way that they use cheese, you know, in their meals, and you know, I'd be with all these other winemakers, and at the end of dinner, a lot of them were like, you know, I've had enough. I don't want anything else. But when they brought the cheese around, I always had to try it. So I got the name, and when I was on this trip, you know, fromage means cheese. Well, I was Charles Fromage, or Chuck E. Cheese, they called me, because I really like the cheese, and that's good. Yeah. So, but I, you know, it's just you know, it's so great. I even looked into making cheese at one time.
Oh, okay.
But it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, and cheese is really the artisanal cheeses have really come into their own recently too.
Oh, it's so great to have, you know, a lot of local cheese now, and how it's a lot like winemaking. You know how where they're you know, raising the animals and what they eat, and how it reflects in the cheese. It's a lot like winemaking, and I really have a great appreciation for what they're doing, because you know, it's 24/7 when you start to milk animals, and that's not an easy job. And then you're, you know, making it and selling it all. So yeah, tough job. So I really have a lot of admiration for those people.
Yeah, it's a hands-on process, that's for sure.
Definitely.
So I guess all that's really left here is to talk about the future. Where do you see the industry going, or Fidelitas? I'm gonna kind of leave that up to you to decide what you want to talk about there.
Okay, well, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about Red Mountain, and you know, that being a big part of our future now, and we're going to have vineyards come into their own. So for Fidelitas, there's a big future for our presence on Red Mountain, and so we make several different wines from Red Mountain. The focus is going to shift even more that way, and that we'll have estate fruit coming on. So not only will we be making wines from the appellation, but we'll be making our own estate wines as well. So that's a big part of our future, I think, with Fidelitas. I don't anticipate that we'll grow the brand to be some big, huge brand, but if the opportunities are there, we might grow a little bit more. But we'll stay on the small, more artisan level with Fidelitas, and real focused on Red Mountain. You know, we'll probably continue the whole Wine Boss thing here, and it's a great production facility. We think we can. I don't think we've made our best wines yet. I say that honestly. You know, we do the best we can. We get an incredible fruit, obviously, but I think we can do a better job. And so, for me, to take that to the next level is important, and that'll be a big challenge for us in the future. What can we do on the winemaking side to make things better? And you know, as far as the industry grows, boy, the sky is really the limit, with the demand for wine in the United States just starting to really take off. I really hope we can keep up.
Right.
You know, we need, you know, everybody needs to realize we got to plant more grapes and have more facilities and better trained people, so the industry can go forward. So I'm a big advocate for the Wine Science Center at WSU, and getting that built and in place and up and running. I benefited from an education at Davis. We need that locally, so that we can train people, so that they're ready, so that the industry can go forward. We have our own unique problems here in Washington, and we can't solve those without spending money on the science of it all. And so I'm a big advocate for that. Good. For the Science Center.
Good, good, good. Well, this is idrinkyourwine.com, Charlie, and we have our wine here. So, what are we drinking here today?
Well, I had the good opportunity to make some Chenin Blanc from 2011, and so sometimes we forget about varieties, and it was great to make it again and realize that I like Chenin Blanc. It's good. It's a good wine, and it's springtime, and
right, it's getting warm,
and it's always good to have a nice glass of white wine.
Okay, well, cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh, that is good. I can see that on the patio. Oh, in the summer.
Definitely.
That's really good. Wow, nice. And a departure for you, because I got to admit, I drink a lot more red wine than I do white wine.
I do too, but once in a while you got to go back and there's a wine for every food, and why not Chenin Blanc?
Why not? There you go. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today here on idrinkyourwine.com, Charlie. It's been a real blast. A pleasure to talk to you. And remember, if you're buying, I'm drinking. That's good, huh?